We're very happy to have our Commonwealth Attorney, Mark Herring, with us today, and it's a real pleasure to have him to convene local public safety officials. I don't recall in my time in local government this happening before, and so, Mark, we really appreciate the opportunity to have your ear and to tell you a little bit about some of the things that are going on the local level, because we know that local politics, local government is where the rubber meets the road. And we have various agencies, and I'm sure they will introduce themselves. Matter of fact, why don't we start by having introductions. Woody, you want to start?
Yes, I'm C.T. Woody. I'm the sheriff of the Richmond, Virginia.
Chris Priest, Assistant Chief of BC Police Department.
John Venuti, VC Police.
He used to be a Richmond police officer.
Eric Eagles, Deputy Chief of Police for Richmond. John Buturla, Deputy Chief.
Ray Tarasovic, Chief of Police.
Mike Herring, Commonwealth Attorney's Office.
Dwight Jones, Mayor.
Mark Herring, Attorney General.
Cynthia Hudson, Chief Deputy Attorney General.
Very good. And so for the city of Richmond, we have embraced community policing as our model of policing, and we believe that it has strengthened our department. And we believe that we have seen the results of building trust with people in our community. Our crimes are down, and our violent crimes are down, and property crimes have dropped dramatically. We are able to happily report that we are no longer the murder capital of the country, and that our homicides that were 160 in 1994 are down to 37 last year. So that's a huge drop. And the impact of that is that our city is growing because we can now look at ourselves as a livable community. And so our population is growing. We are up to 210,000 for the first time in years. We are above the 200,000 mark. And so we think that that has a lot to do with the perception and the reality that Richmond is a safer place to live. We always cooperate with other jurisdictions and with other policing agencies, and I think that it's tremendous the way the cooperation is across county lines and with other institutions of higher learning. So with that, Mark, we're delighted to have you here, and I would imagine that others would have something to say. Chief, you want to just plug in?
Sure. I am also honored to be here. When the mayor says, for us, it's embracing community, that's truly what it's become, both internally and externally. And I think that's where, and across government, my relationship with the Commonwealth's attorney is strong. My relationship with the sheriff is strong. My relationship we have 3 universities in the city. My relationship with all of them is strong. We partner across our, crime in this region nor in any doesn't know which side of the street it's on. Doesn't know that it's on the Henrico side of the street or the Richmond side of the street. There used to be the kind of city stigma that occurred, that, well, crime was in the city and the suburbs were oblivious to that. Just not the case. It's not the case anymore, nor is it in practice. With our partners in Henrico, we are engaged every day in joint and community patrols, where our officers patrol together along those borders. It has been extraordinarily beneficial. And our programs are geared to involvement. Besides having significantly, and I'll stop soon, but besides having significantly lower crime, which is an indicator of that outreach that we do, we have way above national averages in this city in crime closure. That comes from good policing, but it also comes from good witnesses. It comes from folks who are willing to say, I saw it, he did it. And that, I was here for a while, then gone for a while, and I'm now back. In my 9 years now in the city of Richmond, that has been the most remarkable change. The willingness of folks to engage themselves with us without fear, with significantly less fear of any retribution or reprisal, to say, it happened, I saw it, he did it.
If
if it would be okay, I'd like to take a minute and just give you a quick overview of the Attorney General's office and some of the reviews that I'm undertaking right now and the reason why I've asked to meet with you. And first of all, thank you all very much for taking the time to meet with me. I'm meeting with local law enforcement all across the state. We're doing 22 regional meetings. We expect over 58 different jurisdictions to participate in those, and it's extremely helpful. We've got approximately 425 individuals on staff in the Attorney General's office. Most of them are in the Richmond office. Some represent universities and colleges. They're spread around the state. We have others in child support enforcement, again, spread around the state. We've got 3 relatively small branch offices, one in Fairfax, one in Roanoke, and one in Abingdon. We've got 5 divisions separated based on subject areas of the law. So we've got health, education, social services, transportation, real estate, and construction, commerce, environment, and technology, civil litigation, and public safety and enforcement. Our public safety and enforcement is the largest division of the 5, and the individuals working in that division, some do criminal appeals, and as you know, most of the prosecutions happen at the local level through the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office. We handle criminal appeals. We also have some special prosecutors that, in a narrow band of cases, will prosecute crimes and also assist if there are cases where we can be helpful on in other parts of the state or in multi-jurisdictional grand juries. We also have some specialized investigators, a computer forensics unit, some people that do financial analysis to help out with investigations of money laundering, and also a lot of folks involved in education and outreach. And the reason that I'm doing these types of meetings around the state is I'm doing 3 different reviews right now. One is, how can I make the Attorney General's office more efficient and more effective? So I've got a work group of 3 individuals. One has experience as a former law firm manager. Second, a former state administrator. Third, coming from the business side and efficiency and operations, looking at how I can streamline the work we do, how we can make it more efficient and get more out of the resources that we have. Second, I'm looking at all of the programs and services that the office is a part of, and also the skill sets and experiences that the individuals who are working in those areas have. And then the third piece of that review is what I'm doing right now, meeting with local law enforcement, local prosecutors to find out what are the major public safety challenges that you all face out in your communities. How have we worked with you all in the past? How can we help you meet your challenges, so that as I go back and sort of retool the office a little bit, if I can find some efficiencies, if I can redirect some resources, where would I prioritize those in a way that would best serve all the citizens of the Commonwealth? And so by going around talking to folks out in the community who are on the front lines of keeping our communities and our neighborhoods safe each and every day, I can best prioritize where I can move some resources to best help you all meet those challenges. So that's the reason why I've asked to meet with you, and again, I really appreciate your time. And I'll say that there's, in a meeting like this, that sometimes when we talk about emerging public safety threats or crimes generally, there's the misimpression that there's all the rampant crime because we focus on an increase or a spike in criminal activity or some other aspect of public safety. But there are good people out doing a lot of good work. As you mentioned, the crime rate is down, and that's a good thing. And what I want to do is figure out how can I help you continue that trend. And so thank you again for meeting with me. And so with that as kind of an opener.
We hear from the universities.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I think, here in Richmond, we have an unprecedented level of cooperation. It's always been like that. And, when you look to different parts of the states and other parts of the country, you really don't always see that. So I think in Richmond, we're really, really fortunate to have the level of cooperation that we have. For VCU, we are, one of the largest campus law enforcement agencies in the country. We've got a lot of challenges in an urban environment. A lot of the responsibilities we take on, we share with Chief Tarasovic. We've got a lot of assistance from Virginia State Police this year, and keeping students safe, in our environment at VCU, our community is over 50,000 students, faculty, and staff. Level 1 trauma center, major academic campus. Keeping students safe at VCU is critical to the success of VCU, and it's critical to the success of the city of Richmond, and I think we all recognize and understand that. We are also the only campus law enforcement agency in the state of Virginia with our own certified training academy. So we do all of our own training for our police officers, as well as a lot of training for other campus law enforcement agencies. So we appreciate the opportunity to come and discuss, some of the issues that are going on in the metropolitan area.
Sheriff?
It's a pleasure and honor for me to be here, and as sheriff of the city of Richmond, all around this table, from the mayor's office to law enforcement, we have very strong support. We believe in teamwork, partnership, working together, problem solvers. Our main goal at Richmond City Jail is to make sure that even though we got the new Justice Center, which I'm very proud of, and the mayor's administration, council, and the community, Commonwealth Attorney's Office, was very strong support. Our main objective is to make sure now that the right kind of people is actually being sent to jail, and have an alternative sentencing program, that we're not just concerned about reducing the population because we're overcrowded, but we're mostly concerned about helping those that who have mental illness, making sure that the people who have got the right opportunities from the court or before they get to court. The main goal is being proactive instead of being reactive. We have great programs inside of the jail, but we need greater programs outside of the jail for those who get put out of school for whatever reason, or those who have certain mental abilities or addiction. It's not a crime, it's a sickness. So they should go where we will stop putting band-aids on the wound instead of treating the wound itself. So we have great communication, and like I said, all of us work together as a team for the same cause. Basically in jail, we want those to get the right help, that accept help, and to come out as better citizens instead of being better criminals. So that's our goal. Thank you for giving us this opportunity.
It's funny that the sheriff said that. Oh my God. Sitting above us are 20 students in our crisis intervention training, funded in part by the Attorney General's office. And that mode of changing the behaviors of police officers towards folks with mental illness is an important link to what the sheriff was just talking about. We have crisis intervention is spreading like wildfire, but we're at the forefront. Memphis was the beginning, but in this region we're at the forefront. And our partners get to send people to the training that I provide, and it gives the police officer an opportunity to on the street recognize someone who is suffering from mental illness, as opposed to that person seeing the jail, then seeing a judge, and then trying to adjudicate or find the correct treatment mode on the backside. Often, for minor crime, we can address that because our officers are attuned to what mental illness looks like in the community. And I didn't mean to, but the sheriff just brought it, because they are upstairs right now. We have 20 upstairs right now.
We've reduced our officer-involved use of force by 65% over the past 4 years, and crisis intervention is a big piece of that reduction.
So, Attorney General Herring, the chief has a prettier list than I do, so I'm going to defer to his list of wants. But 3 thoughts do come to mind. The first is, something common to the comments from each of us is that the collaboration that we enjoy here, it's not totally novel or unique, but I think it's accurate to say Richmond is among a handful of jurisdictions nationwide that convenes every 45 days stakeholders from 14 law enforcement agencies, and yours is one of them. And we get together in this room and we have strategic, targeted meetings where we talk about some of the same things that are on your mind, trends, issues that are important, and we do our best to get ahead of problems so that we're not just reacting, and we look forward to your continued support. Secondly, the sheriff is alluding, and I agree, to the whole notion of greater community supervision for low-risk offenders. And that makes perfect sense to folks like us who are inside baseball. But what we discover is that very often there are legislative impediments or appropriation impediments, so that our ability to use state per diems, for example, for DOC offenders in local facilities, to supervise them in the community in a much cheaper but equally effective way is difficult, because sometimes the legislation simply won't allow it. And so that's one of the things that you're going to hear from the city on, if not in this session, then perhaps in the next session of the General Assembly. And then finally, when I attend Commonwealth's attorneys' meetings and in my conversations with our police departments, I know that economic investigations and prosecutions they are issues of need in cities and counties, but they consume an inordinate amount of resources. And so Richmond's ability, for example, to devote a team to a protracted investigation and then a protracted white-collar prosecution is limited at best. And I think that may be one area that we could increase the collaboration with the AG's office on. So I hope that they're going to.
So now the Attorney General said that he's going to create some efficiencies so that he can reallocate some resources. So I didn't hear anybody ask for money, so.
I'll always ask for that. But I think Mike, although he must have perused my list before he began to speak, I think
He looked over your shoulder. I think he was reading from you.
I think the whole sense, Mike's last point about our involvement in, whether you call it cybercrime, whether you can call it computer forensics, it's going to grow, and our capacity as localities to grow with the sophistication, and I'm talking everything, we do a good job right now at the stuff that's in your face, child pornography, that kind. But that stretches through petty crime done through computers, to elaborate crime done through computers, to intrusion, which, to intrusion of government, to intrusion of our databases, which is just scary stuff when you try to pit our dollars and our resource against that kind of sophistication. And then we have locally the jurisdictional problem of the intrusions may be coming from Eastern Europe. The intrusions may be coming from Africa. And yet we have victims. So I think when Mike talks about the need for even that, both state and national kind of intercession, because it's going to grow. It's going to grow. People are going to quit breaking into cars and start breaking into your computer to steal your $40. And I think it is the wave of the near future.
And at our level, we're really seeing an increase in computer harassment, stalking, electronic stalking, that level of crime within, the age demographic that attend institutions of higher education, much more.
And so when you're talking about cybercrime, that can range from child pornography to cyber stalking, to identity theft.
To the target database, yeah. And it's just so broad. It's so broad that it's difficult for us, while we're trying to manage local crime, to get our hands around it. And dollars are, we're spending those dollars every day, and to try to, and there's so much sophistication in that. That, and I know, at the federal level, they're looking to us to partner with them because they don't want to reach to the small crime. And yet we can't, there's got to be some medium. And I think the state may have a role in that kind of coalescing between petty crime, small crime, the kind of crime that we can attack, some to that very large crime that has to be attacked on a national level.
Not to move off of the cybercrime, but you had mentioned the mental health and the crisis intervention training. Different localities respond to ECOs and TDOs a little bit differently. There's been a lot of talk about that. How far along are you now in the training, and what's the typical process for a TDO in Richmond? Are they taken to the nearest emergency room first, or drop-off centers, or what's the local practice here?
In October, we created our first joint drop. We have a crisis triage center now that's located uniquely.
And that's probably the right term.
Yes.
I probably shouldn't have said drop-off center.
It's a new
No,
term.
most people could say drop-off center. It is uniquely located at Chippenham Hospital, which is on our border. It's in the city, but it's on our border between the city and Chesterfield County. We have, through grant funding, been able to provide police officers there through most of the day, through early afternoon to late evening, when we normally encounter folks with mental illness. So it becomes, in essence, a drop-off center as opposed to a bring someone here, the officer who's now removed himself or herself from the street for a protracted period of time, waiting for a mental health evaluation, waiting for the order to be drawn, waiting for a bed. Now we have a center where there are officers assigned using grant funding, that the officer who engages the person literally is able to go and drop that person off, give a statement of facts, contact the magistrate via video. The order can be drawn, the person can be placed. Obviously, there's always not enough beds for the amount of people. That's a concern. But we have significantly streamlined. Henrico County has one. We now have one that we share with Chesterfield. It is a lifesaver. It is a time saver. And not only is it a time saver, not only does it put the officer back on the street. That's the major good part of it. But it encourages officers, as opposed to I'm gonna have to go over there and sit for hours and hours when I could be doing what I was born to do. Now they can go there with the assurance that they will be there a short time. There is someone who is trained, CIT trained, at the reception facility who can take the over from them, so that they're more encouraged to treat mental illness, as opposed to, let's take them to the jail where I can turn them over more quickly.
Right, where they might spend 2 hours or less to go through the whole booking process, as opposed to 6-8 hours or longer if they have to transport.
So we have one south of the river. If you've got a bunch of dollars, one north of the river would be no, that's true. We have one, that is located uniquely, because and we're serving the Chesterfield County community with that center also.
And the other caveat to that really is they're getting the proper treatment from the beginning. Instead of coming to Richmond City Jail and staying there for 30 days before they get evaluated, or before someone can come there and so they get worse, they don't get better. But they get the proper treatment from the beginning up front when they go to a drop-off center, because they have the professionals there to do that. They can get a report quickly to the court for the judges and for everybody to have. And that also aids them in the time that they'll spend in energy. My philosophy is that it just have to be more fun for mental health, because regardless of the crime that they're committing, they get worse than energy, because our requirement is just standard treatment. And standard treatment does not make them better. So they need to be in a mental facility instead of being in jails. Most of our jails, not just here in the city, but in the United States, are full of people that are mentally ill. So we are actually locking up the wrong people. We should lock up the people that are really criminals and that we are afraid of, instead of locking those up that need help and need treatment. And and then the whole situation with jobs. So it's a large piece of pie.
You asked how fast. We're training 20 people every other month, so 120 per year. We decided last year that it wasn't a voluntary program, it's a mandatory program. So every police officer, including the chief of police, will attend CIT training.
We've got just about half of our officers trained at VCU CIT training.
And we have about 60 deputies that have been graduated from the same program.
Mike raised the issue of legislation and the possibility of maybe doing some legislation so that the funds can follow people who are alternatives to incarceration program.
I know that our mental health system has been underfunded in Virginia for years.
Yes.
I know the General Assembly talked about some changes. There's going to be an ongoing study, and that funding has to be on the table for discussion for sure.
But in this instance, this would be a person who would ordinarily go to the jail,
That's correct.
and we would spend that money anyway. And so it would just be the reallocation of those resources to an alternative program, so the state would not really be out any money.
That's correct. Yeah.
It would be allowing for state per diems to be spent on evidence-based practices that support supervision in the community, not limited to offenders with mental illness.
Okay. Other threats in the community, public safety challenges.
Guns,
Cell phone theft.
cell phone theft. You saw one with my list.
I got metal theft.
Metal theft. One, two, three for me, Mr. Mayor. Guns.
Let's take them in that order. Let's start with the guns.
Guns. Simple. The numbers are simple. We have a proliferation of guns, and that's with crime. I mean, I say this all. We had 20,000 major crimes in this city 10 years ago. We had 10,000 last year. 50% reduction in major crime. 57% reduction in violent crime over those past 10 years, and yet we still see an inordinate amount of gun crime. I've gone to the General Assembly and been the sacrificial testimony giver for closing the loophole, and I think they pick a chief every year to go get battered, and I've been battered. The loophole is the fact that we could sit at the same. We had a gun show here May 15th, 16th, last weekend. That I could sit here as Ray Tarasovic, private citizen with my 40 guns, and Mike could sit here as Mike Herring, honorable national firearms dealer with his 40 guns, and you can to buy his, you need a background check, and to buy mine, you need to show up. It just fascinates me. It fascinates me. We had, simple numbers. 256 guns stolen in this city last year. More than 700 guns recovered from persons who possessed them illegally. We talk about closing just the sale loophole, but the whole straw purchase idea, the whole John's idea.
And just to follow up on that, aside from the gun show loophole, the straw purchases, are you seeing more where somebody who's ineligible to purchase a firearm goes to a friend or a relative who is and asks them to buy it, or is it happening in larger numbers in order to sell in traffic?
I think it's clearly the case that the folks are coming into possession of, and we're not talking about old, quite sophisticated weaponry, that folks who are convicted felons, and that's the primary, and that's we could talk about the mental health and the domestic violence prohibitions, but the significant prohibition is convicted felons in possession of guns, and they can only acquire them either through the person-to-person purchase that does not require a background check, or through theft or straw purchase. And so it's hard. And I know the state police have significantly increased their capacity with regard to legitimate transfers, to checking on legitimate transfers. I just don't know how many illegitimate transfers occur. John would say. John's looking for smart, in the advocacy role, John says, let's go smart technology. Let's make let's make Mike Herring's gun, and only Mike Herring can use it. Those technologies, when I get the cell phones, we'll talk about that. People are talking about those kinds of smart technologies where if possession of, I'm not a gun person, so, but where if possession of a gun is what you want to do, it becomes your gun. And so the theft of that gun becomes a meaningless effort because it can't be used. I mean, those technologies are around the corner, but we can't even close the simple sale loophole. So just in your role as advocate, I think it's important that the message about guns and violence, they go hand in hand. The instantaneous me to this is just too instantaneous. Doesn't permit time for thinking. John, here, John, CT, Mike, you see them every day.
You know,
Mike prosecutes them every day.
I think that the messaging from your office on discrete issues like gangs is effective. And if you all deem it appropriate, maybe a similar message around guns, because the felon cohort is obviously of concern, but we also see a much higher incidence of gun possession and usage with younger people. So 16 to 20, you'd be amazed, if not just outright shocked, at the number of police reports that we see where there was a robbery or some sort of theft and there was a gun in the hand of a young person. And so maybe if we begin to attack that when kids are younger, and I don't know what the science is on raising the issue of guns with young people, but you know, we can either stick our heads in the sand or do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Cell phones?
Cell phone theft. I'm a numbers guy. 1,400 cell phones taken last year in this city, either through theft from your vehicle, theft from your purse. We have folks, John and I share we have folks who get robbed and they don't ask you for your money anymore. They do not ask you for your money. They don't say go into your pocket. They say give me the cell phone. And there are technological, again, because we can't put an officer on every corner, we're not going to stop every robbery. In the 1980s, one of the most prevalent crimes in this country was the theft of radios from motor vehicles. In the 90s, that stopped instantly by making the radio identified to the car from which it came, and it did not work. It did not work when removed from that car. That technology exists it's called bricking cell phones. That technology exists right now. You can do it with your Apple iPhone right now. You can't do it with the broad range of other phones. And it makes this cell phones. You know, there are legitimate folks who recover cell phones, who recover them for the insurance industry, who recover them for sale in other places, and they go through a process to recover your cell phone. But just as readily as those places, you can go to those places. You can go to which we are attacking. You can go to a place where you can just sell your cell phone through the back door with very little information. But if the cell phone becomes a brick by the owner, the moment it's 10 minutes after it's stolen, the owner going to that owner's home computer and making the cell phone a brick by turning it off, then it becomes useless to the buyer. You take away the demand.
We still have kiosks.
Oh, but the folks that manage kiosks, you know, they do a reasonable job of their kiosks that you can sell your cell phone. They do
I
it.
had no idea. Cell phones.
None in the city, but in both counties, in Chesterfield County and Rico County. Echo ATM. They do a reasonable job of filtering folks, and they make folks produce a driver's license. They're photographing people. They are watching them live from where they come. They are a big proponent of breaking the cell phone, because then they won't buy anything that they have to return, that they have paid money for, and then they have to return to a police department as evidence. And the technology's there. The technology, Samsung, the other big phone maker, has the technology now too. There's a $7.1 billion insurance business that because if you get your phone stolen, then you have to have one replaced through insurance. And, I mean, there are impediments, but I think that, you know, as we get smarter about how we do business, we have to grow with the technology too. And the advocacy role of, and not, you know, in California and New York, because they are suffering the cell phone theft at even more alarming rates than we are. And our rate is pretty alarming. I mean, it's bothersome. It's bothersome to have people robbed purely for their cell phone. I'd like to take the attraction of the cell phone away, rather than trying to catch every person that breaks into every car looking for a cell phone. If cell phones and guns aren't enough, I am probably the only person in the city of Richmond that still has a copper downstop. Because I'm the chief of police, and I think they know it. Precious metals and I know several years ago we worked with the Attorney General's office on tightening up precious metals stuff. But catalytic converters from cars, air conditioning units from homes, copper pipes from homes that are occupied, and there is a legitimate market for those things. There is an illegitimate market for those things. We're not going to take away. I mean, I have a sector lieutenant, he's now a captain, who used to deploy his people on the price of copper. If copper prices were up, he deployed his people to prevent burglaries because he knew copper prices were up. And it was. Deployed his people on the price of copper. We are losing an alarming rate of precious metal go through.
You all are not alone. I've heard the same thing in a couple of different areas. In Northern Virginia, heard it in
I'm just trying to protect
Petersburg and Newport News today.
I'm just trying to protect the mayor's property. And the Commonwealth attorney, and the sheriff.
I can't afford copper guns.
You said that you all had worked with our office in trying to tighten up some of the laws on that. What, do you remember when that was and what changes were made? Because clearly it doesn't seem to be working because...
The task force was convened 2 years ago.
2 years ago?
I think we need to revisit it, though.
And
we need to discourage a retailer or a wholesaler from seeing the same person on 20 consecutive days who's bringing small amounts of copper to that wholesaler. I mean, and we do it, but we're after the fact. Somebody's already lost their copper when we finally catch on.
And I'm sure it's hard to get the proof to get it.
Copper's gone.
The copper's gone.
Try to identify your copper pipe.
And the penalty is not terribly serious.
Most often the individual things are misdemeanor thefts. Difficult stuff.
It's going to take multiple
aggregate
convictions before they even get a serious sentence.
There are people that say they can take the catalytic converter off the car in 20 seconds. Because there's a little titanium in there? Platinum. I'm sorry, platinum. A trace amount of platinum, right? Wow.
You all haven't said anything about gangs, is that?
Because we're doing better at gangs, and we've been partnering with the Attorney General's office in the GRIP initiative for since 2004 maybe. So we're 10 years into the GRIP initiative. It has worked in this city. Do we still have gangs? We still have gangs. Do we have them? And we don't have them in that kind of constant criminal engagement. We're not seeing it the way we saw it.
And I think in a lot of communities they've gone underground because they took some hits and the crime suite task force, the AG's office, and the GRIP initiative had some success, and we put some figureheads in jail. And the reality is, gang members like drug dealers are not idiots. So you evolve to your threat, and that's what they did. They've gotten quieter and savvier, and so they're not as brazen about the expression of colors and unclaimed territory. And I frankly think the city doesn't have the gang problem that it did 5-6 years ago. I think it is in some of the surrounding jurisdictions, which is good for us.
And while I'm looking at ways to maybe reprioritize some resources within my office, while I hear that in a lot of areas they've experienced similar things, I've also heard that they don't want the resources we have. You know, it's not like the problem's solved and we can move those folks to doing other things, because it's, what I hear is if we were to do that, they would be right back.
We are early in the
years
maintenance
ago.
phase. If you were to describe it as the critical phase and then the main, I think we are early into trying to, and we've shifted some focus to younger kids too, to try to do that discouragement so that we aren't fostering the next level of gang member. No, I think you.
So while I'm hearing generally more positive things about our anti-gang efforts, don't think I'm going to take resources away from that.
Please don't.
Okay. I think the other piece that's very important about it is that it's from the Commonwealth Attorney's Office and law enforcement itself. They're doing a tremendous job with turning gangs against each other. And that has helped tremendously. They testify, put it in the right place, and get them to solve a lot of murders where some gangs have actually committed, and it got one of the members testify against the other members with all the facts from law enforcement, and that has helped tremendously. All of them, when put in the right position, we all know something around this table. The name of the game is to give us less time as possible, and they will do whatever is necessary to put away someone else if they're going to get less time. Particularly, they are afraid of, know how dangerous that are. And that's been a great caveat here in reference to being able to protect that particular person and get that particular person to solve the crime and open up all the intelligence that some folks outside law enforcement don't really know. I see it happen inside the jail all the time. They have to come in and cut all the tapes because they're talking so much. Wait a minute, we have to handle this first. But time takes care of the whole situation. So most likely, other than the technical stuff and assistance from the Commonwealth Attorney's Office, law enforcement itself does a great job of having them to be informed and given the information that they can verify to support the facts that they really need. And that's tremendous.
And what about drug use? Are there certain drugs that are becoming more prevalent?
Heroin overdosing has become, I mean, it's not a Richmond problem, it's not this area, it's become an East Coast problem, and people are dying. Our death rate in this city, while our murder rate plummets, our heroin overdose death rate doubled last year. My partners in Henrico, Hanover, and North, Fredericksburg, Warrenton, Culpeper,
Loudon, Winchester, Fairfax.
Go right, and you know, it's the fruits of good work gone another way. What a lot of our perception is with regard to this is that, you know, a professional heroin user, if that's a reasonable term, is not going to overdose. But a person who has been priced out of the prescription medication opiates, who turns to heroin, doesn't have the sophistication in use, and they're killing themselves. Philip Seymour Hoffman aside, and we lost it. We lost a lead singer from a band here yesterday or the day before. While they draw attention to it, that kind of attention ebbs and flows, you know, because most folks say, well, I don't use heroin, and it's wrong to use heroin. But we're losing lives. I mean, we are losing lives of heroin, and it's not a city problem. That's what's unique about it. It's no longer, it's a rural problem, it's a suburban problem. You know, it's not, oh, those heroin folks in the city. We're just, you know, last year we got on it very quickly. We were one of the first to this region, because we do our regional partnership, we were able to compare notes. So when I had only 5 and I had 11 the year before, didn't seem like a terrible thing. But when Doug Middleton in Henrico was up also 5 on his, and Dave Hines in Hanover was up 6 over the year before, we had that collective sense. So we tried to get a public information message out. We had our PIOs working together, and I think that's what collectively, you know, we've got to protect folks from themselves, and that's difficult. I mean, and that's where the advocacy part of it comes in. The market, you know, I've been at this business for more than 40 years. The marketplace has changed. You don't drive down streets with guys in puffy jackets standing on corners like we all. It's where we come from, dealing drugs. The market is it's a cell phone call to a cell phone call to a cell phone call to a meeting in an alley. So you know, it's not that overt stuff, but it still exists. Sheriff,
Anything else?
Your population with regard to drugs.
Yes, definitely. Of course, most of the time, you know, they're using heroin to actually increase the strength to get somebody out that have something weaker, and then someone comes along and uses it, you know, to keep from getting sick. They don't get high. They just use it to keep from actually getting sick themselves, and then they overdose. And so this guy or this particular group is trying to take over because I have the strongest amount of it and the best of it, so we try to put you out there. And so it's worked that way. But when you're sick, all you want to do is stop from being sick. You don't get high after a while. You just want to stop from being sick because you have maxed out.
One of the factors associated with heroin that we're seeing is people's dependency on the prescription drugs, the oxycontins, hydrocodones, and as those drugs, as the manufacturers have changed the chemistry associated with drugs, have made heroin and heroin use more popular. And so from your efforts, an educational campaign regarding securing your prescription drugs, keeping them secure, keeping them out of the hands of young people, the increase in emergency room visits by young people abusing their parents, their family members' prescription drugs. And we're seeing that use as well.
Is there much of an indication that there are certain doctors that are writing prescriptions right and left?
I think your office has done some work in that regard, and I think that has to continue because there are those doctors that will just write a script.
Anything else? It's been very, very helpful, and I want to thank you all very much for taking the time to talk with me today, and I look forward to working with you in the years ahead.
Thank you. Don't forget us.
Thank you.